There are only 3 games in the NHL tonight. Ottawa at Toronto, that is a biggie. Florida at Washington, doubleheader on TNT. Florida at Washington, followed by LA Kings at Vegas. But I would think this guy, Jock Wilson, QR Calgary's in the middle of it. And we will talk a little CFL here. But Jonathan Huberdeau benched in the third period of a Flames comeback win, 4-2 over Nashville. How much are they talking about it in Calgary? And what's your read on the situation?
Well, I think it's kind of funny, Rod, because you're still bitter about getting fired from a $100 a week job. This guy's getting fired from a $10.5 million a year job. Well, he's not getting fired because he's not going anywhere. But I'll tell you this, the Calgary Flames played their best hockey of the season in the third period last night. They were disciplined, they were structured, and a big part of it was Jonathan Huberdeau wasn't part of the team. So you can take that for what it's worth.
I will. Well, can I just clarify, if you want to give me 10.5, I'll sit on the bench all day, every day.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with it. Yeah, exactly. Well, where do they go from here, do you think?
You know, it's a great question. And ultimately, you're not getting rid of Jonathan Huberdeau. That's a contract that you can't buy it out. You can't trade him. Nobody wants him. And right now, it doesn't look like the Calgary Flames really want him. Now, the players were saying all the right things last night after the game, saying, oh, what a great team player. And he was sitting there on the end of the bench. And every time we would score a goal or make a good play, he'd be the first guy to be the cheerleader. Hey, you don't need a $10.5 million cheerleader. Bottom line is the Calgary Flames are in this transition period. They're not sure what they are, what they're going to do with their unrestricted free agents at the end of the season. You know, is this a playoff team? Is this a team that can, succeed under Ryan Huska and a young coaching staff? You know, the mood on the team is certainly a lot better than it was last year. Everybody talked about the toxic, environment that Daryl Sutter, sort of had in that dressing room. Hey, it's great, but you got to win games too. And this team is still a long ways away from being a competitive team, but it's a baby step last night. And I think if you're a Flames fan, if you're a Flames coach, if you're a Flames player, you've got this injection of youth with, Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil. So from that perspective, there is a little bit of hope. And I think the last couple of games have given this organization and this fan base a little bit of hope.
Well, I'll tell you, I'd love to know your thoughts. I respect them on everything, but on Ryan Huska specifically. I mean, he is a friend of mine. He came down to Century Downs, was on the show with us, and I thought he explained it very well. He's very reasoned. He's very calm. He was like, hey, I wanted to go with the guys in the third that were getting it done, and he wasn't. No big deal. This wasn't going to be an overnight flip, Jock.
Hey, that's the one bullet a coach has, right, Rod? That the fact is these guys can't be cut. These guys, are guaranteed contracts, not like the Canadian Football League. The one thing you can control as a coach is ice time. And, Ryan Huska did the right thing last night. Jonathan Huberdeau was awful, the first couple of periods. Too many giveaways, and he hasn't been good all season long. They've given him every opportunity. They put him on the number one line. They've put him on the number one power play, and he's not producing. So if you're a coach and you really are committed to, getting everybody to buy in, everybody in that dressing room knows who's playing and who's not playing, at least well. And the fact of the matter is that was the right thing for Ryan Huska to do. So I give him credit, because I'm not sure other coaches would have had the balls to bench a $10.5 million player.
There you go. Ding, ding, ding. You have a very difficult job, and you have for a long time, post-game show. You must be a sucker for punishment. I'm wondering how it was after the Stamps. Those are tough calls to take. I've been there. What was the reaction after Calgary lost in the West semifinal last week, the Stampeders?
Well, as you might expect, because you have been there before, Rod, it was, let's fire the coach, let's fire the offensive coordinator, let's fire the defensive coordinator, let's get rid of the quarterback, let's completely press the reset button and blow it up. Now, hey, is that going to happen? Obviously not. This was a very young team that was riddled with injuries this year. Do they have to make changes? Do they have to, press a little bit of the reset button and try to get better in certain areas? You bet they do. And it's going to be a big, tough chore for Dave Dickenson moving forward with this team. And I think ultimately, when I look at it, I prioritized it three ways when I was doing my show and my recap. Number one, the Stampeders have never been aggressive in the John Hufnagel era on the free agent market. There may be a day two or a day three player in free agency. This team miscalculated their offensive line this year. When they lost their two starting tackles, Julian Good-Jones first to the Eagles, and then, of course, Julian Good-Jones was plucked off the practice roster yesterday with the Washington Commanders. So great to see he's on the 53-man roster there. And then, of course, the whole Derek Dennis situation. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one because Derek Dennis was coming off the serious injury. Derek Dennis looked okay in training camp, but for whatever reason, the coaching staff didn't think he was good enough. Got beaten out by Deontay Demery for that job. And the Stampeders never recovered, so they never were able to replace their two starting tackles. The interior of the offensive line, also was a little bit off this year with Sean McEwen and Ryan Sevier and Bryce Bell and even Zach Williams to the extent. So the offensive line was a huge issue. So number one is you got to be a day one player on free agency, and you got to look at the two best tackles out there, and you have to improve that position. And I do think the Stampeders are going to be a day one player when it comes to free agency this year. I don't know what's going to happen with the coaching staff, but there's obviously going to... Sorry, go ahead.
No. Continue. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I don't know what's going to happen with the coaching staff. This year, there was a change in the play calling because, your offensive coordinator is also your offensive line coach, and that's Pat Delmonico. And it's tough to do both as an offensive line coach. And even Dave Dickinson admitted that, he couldn't be the true play caller. Mark Mueller was doing some of the play calling, but it was really a team effort between Dave, between Mark Mueller, and between Pat Delmonico. So I think if you really want to take some of the pressure off Dave Dickinson as the head coach and general manager, maybe you've got to go out and bring in a true offensive coordinator, into the fold, into the mix. And I think that will be very interesting to see what transpires there. So that would maybe be a change that I also make. Hey, they're going to have to make some changes in their defensive secondary. They had 7 or 8 players, injured on the defensive secondary, some players that they were really hoping to count on this year. That didn't really, pan out for them. So that's another area they're going to have to really address in the offseason. So, are they going to blow it up? They got 40 potential free agents, but ultimately in the Canadian Football League, there are no guaranteed contracts. So you could have a whole bunch of free agents if you really don't want to honor any of those contracts. And I do think the other thing that you're hearing from fans is, I'm not giving up on Jake Maier. I don't think anybody should give up on Jake Maier. He's 26 years old. He's only been in this league for 3 years. Jake Maier has only been a starter in this league for a season and a half. He still threw for over 4,200 yards this year. Jake Maier has upside, and if you look at some, of the top quarterbacks in the league right now, look at how they got there. Am I saying he's a Doug Flutie or a Jeff Garcia or Henry Burris? No, he's not there yet. But, look at how Vernon Adams got to where he is today. Look at how Cody Fajardo got to where he is today. Look at how some of these players had to develop, and they really don't find their mojo until they're 28, 29, 30 years of age. So I do think what you need to do for the Calgary Stampeders, though, is bring in somebody that can put some pressure on Jake Maier. Get an experienced backup, and because right now they don't have confidence in Tommy Stevens, and the two other guys that are third and fourth on the roster, Logan Bonner and Chris Reynolds, they're just not ready for prime time.
Hey, well, I could go longer. We'll have to bring you again soon. I will say this, though. If you recall, you asked my prediction for what Saskatchewan would do, and I said miss the playoffs. This was going into the year, Jock. I don't know if you remember that. How did they do, Jock? I can't remember.
Yeah, well, you know what? I also said the Calgary Stampeders are going to take a step back this year, Rod, but I had no idea they were only going to win 6 games, for God's sake. So we're both brilliant.
I'm not saying you were wrong. I was opening the door for you to say I was right. Okay, Jock, thank you for the visit. Talk soon.
Take care, man.
All right, the great Jock Wilson, QR Calgary.